Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of Speak Plainly with me, your host, Owl Medicine. Today, we're going to be talking about how to satisfy the beast and what that really means. I recently posted an article up on owlchrysalismedicine.com called Satisfy the Beast. It took 3 days to write, and I've been struggling how to really bring the concept out to the world because it's really widely applicable, and that's the reason it's so powerful. That's the reason I really want to talk about it and let everybody know about this, is because it really can improve our lives in many, many, many different ways. And when something is as widely applicable as this is, it's hard to move in a relative straight line from A to Z, you know? So I'm going to do my best. Stick with me, and I hope that you will get something wonderful out of this. So what exactly do I mean by satisfy the beast? First off, we have to talk about what the beast is, and the beast is the human animal. The human animal is the most amazing and most complex, most profound machine that the earth has ever known. It really is. Your body can, in a few milliseconds, tell you where to put your hand in the air to catch a speeding ball flying at you. And it can do it so quickly that you just go whoop and snag it before you even had a chance to think about it. But your laptop, which can do thousands and thousands of computations in a second, is totally incapable of doing that. And a laptop doesn't even have a hand to figure out where to put it. So we really are the most amazing machine that the world has ever created. Every machine has been created by this one, from civilization to rocket ships, the Mars rover, the human machine, the human animal has built all of these things. And when I say satisfy the beast, I use beast specifically because we, for hundreds and certain civilizations, thousands of years now, have had to learn to essentially control the beast. And in a way, if we're going to talk about the biology of that, what we're talking about really is the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is this part of our brain that sits behind our eyeballs. That's the newest part of our brain, the newest part of brains, period. And we have the largest for our brain size. And if you actually scale across species who has the largest prefrontal cortex for their brain size, it actually scales perfectly with how large of a social group that species has to deal with on a regular basis. Human social group is absolutely massive. So we have the largest prefrontal cortex. Okay, awesome. What does that tell us? That basically tells us that the prefrontal cortex is the organ, or the organelle of the brain that has allowed for civilization. If it's all about social stuff, that's really what civilization is, right? Civilization is like, well, I've worked really hard for a long time to just be able to make enough food and stuff for those people around me, my hunter-gatherer society, my family, whatever. And then we moved into an idea of civilization that allowed us to all do a little bit more specialized work, but we created trade and things that allowed us to get all of the things that we needed. And in order to do that, you have to get along with other people, other animals of your species. So the prefrontal cortex is what allows us to do that. It allows us to control the beast. And that is where we have run into a few problems. Our prefrontal cortex being the highest form of our mental capacities. That's our executive functions. That's how we decide things. If I remember right, George W. Bush actually called the prefrontal cortex when that was kind of new, when he was president, he called it the decider. We know he had a wonderful, simple way with words. Do you miss when Bush was like the craziest person in politics? Because I do. Even though 45's gone, I still miss when he was the dumbest person in politics. At any rate, that decider is what has allowed the facilitation of civilization in our species. So that prefrontal cortex is what has allowed us to control the beast. It's what prevents us from having our animalistic reactions and putting ourselves in front of everybody else, because we are a social species. We know that we do need help. That's our strategy on survival. Every animal, plant, fungi on the planet has its own strategy on how it's going to survive in the world. Every species has its own strategy, from birds to spiders. Some live in trees and some live in holes in the grounds, but they're still birds or they're still spiders. They've found a specific niche that allows them to not have to compete for certain resources, whether the resources are space for their habitat or whether it's a specific kind of food. So we all have these specific strategies that help us to stay alive as a species. The human species strategy is cooperation, and that works really well. Charles Darwin was the one who pointed out that the hallmark of the human species is empathy. So that works really well. For a highly empathetic species, we do cooperation really, really well, thanks to that prefrontal cortex allowing us to figure out what we should suppress and what we shouldn't suppress so we can learn how to all get along. So the human animals strategy, it has been based around adaptation, which is really cool. That means we come out of the womb not fully baked. In fact, we're like barely baked. We're only like 9 months baked, and it actually takes 25 years for the human animal to become fully baked. We were designed to be adaptable to a world that no longer exists. We were designed by our great grandma and grandpa. And our great grandma and grandpa loved us so much before we ever existed that they did everything they could to ensure our success. They really set us up for success. They designed our body so beautifully and so efficiently that we've been able to take over the entire world. We've been able to take over the whole planet. And as each generation goes by, it's always been the hope of the human species, and probably for all species, to allow life for our descendants to be a little bit better than the life that we had. And great grandma would definitely be super excited about the lives that we have now compared to the life that they experienced. We have no need for a lot of the built-in instincts and designs that we have in us. We kind of have no need for them now. We have very little need for them. Not no need. We have very little need for them. And the reason we have very, very little need for them is because our world doesn't represent anything like what our grandma and grandpa thought it was going to be like. So, like, we were designed, the human animal was designed to withstand an incredible amount of stress. Like, truly incredible amounts of stress. We are a profoundly resilient species. But we were set up for a specific kind of stress. We were set up for the kind of stress that our great, you get the point, grandma was going to have to deal with. So the type of stress that she had to deal with was finding food every day and protecting herself from the cold and the heat and the wind and the dry and the wet. She had to run away from predators. She had to find food, find prey, and avoid being prey. That's a specific kind of stress. And it means that we were designed for a bunch of stress all up at once, and then eventually that stress resolves and we go back to our baseline, the baseline of what we are like, what our homeostatic existence is without stress. We get to return back to that baseline. And that's great. But nowadays, we don't get to return to that baseline. We are constantly chronically stressed. Now, chronic childhood stress is a serious issue. It has profound, deep, and long-lasting effects on the human animal. Even if you didn't have an overly stressful or traumatic childhood, and now you just find yourself today being a good person. You are concerned with everybody in the world. You're concerned with the well-being of them. When you see people suffering around the planet, it breaks your heart, and you really just wish that there was something that you could do. When you see people in pain, you want to do something. It's important to you because you want to end their suffering. Ending suffering is important to you because you're a good person. And because we're a social species, Grandma designed us to feel that way, right? We get rewarded for feeling that way. It's good for our survival as a species to be concerned in that way for each other. But Grandma didn't design us to be able to know what's happening and see the suffering of people on the other side of the globe. And she definitely didn't design us to see the suffering on the other side of the globe for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But that's exactly what happens. Because we are good people, we want to stay informed about what's happening around the world. And that's a cultural thing that we have it is proper to stay up to date on world events, especially for us liberal types. That is a basic tenet of being a liberal in our country for most people. And that's great. But there's an unforeseen problem that I'm now seeing more and more and more and more in friends and family and clients and people. I'm seeing good, usually liberal people having greater and greater physical and mental health problems that are all tied to chronic stress. And we all want to reduce stress in our lives. We do the best that we can to reduce the stress, but we don't think of watching the news as stress, but it is. What's happening is you're watching some child in Syria get their house bombed, and we get the made-for-TV, most dramatic, most incredible, most prolific and terrifying moments of some horrible event, and we get that same scene played over and over and over and over and over again on repeat. Meanwhile, the people who were actually there experience the terrible trauma and then either die or leave. They get a chance to resolve the trauma because that's what happens naturally in first-person trauma. And that's what our grandma designed us to do. That's how our grandma designed our bodies to work. We experience this terrible stress. We're designed to be able to withstand it so long as in a relatively decent amount of time we get to return to baseline. And if you're there first person, you do get to return to baseline. If you are not there in first person, there is no instinctual, natural progression that can lead you from highly disturbed, highly upset, and stressed to not stressed, because you don't get to walk away from that situation. You don't get to find a refugee camp. You don't get handed a warm meal for the first time in days, weeks, or months. These things are awful to experience, but they end. And that's the key. They end. For us, the safe, liberal observer on the other side of the globe, it doesn't get to end, which means we're just constantly bombarding our bodies with the exact same stress molecules that we would experience if we were in the trauma. But then rather than leave, we just stand at ground zero and watch everything happen. That's essentially what's happening. Now, we're not releasing the same volume of neurotransmitters and stress hormones and all of that kind of stuff, but it's the exact same profile. And those stress molecules have the same result in our bodies. And the results of chronic stress are well known. The results are immune deficiencies and autoimmune diseases. The effects are mental health struggles, depression, and anxiety. The struggles are inability to digest foods or certain foods. We suffer greatly because of this design that was marvelous for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not asking you or myself or anyone to be less concerned or to ignore the news entirely or to decide to be a terrible person who doesn't care about the welfare of anybody but themselves. That's clearly not the point. What I would like to get through to people is we don't have the best instincts to navigate this world with. We really don't. We have incredible instincts to navigate a world that doesn't exist. So I really think that it's time that we take the time to think about exactly where our stresses are coming from and to contrast our instincts and the things that we do compulsively with the real world situations that we face. We have to look at the reality of what's good for us versus our natural human instincts and make a decision which is more beneficial to listen to. It's really hard because essentially what I'm telling you is you have to overcome your biology. And that's a theme in this whole podcast that will never go away. That really is something that is an undeniable truth for the modern day Western person, definitely the modern day American. We're going to have to overcome our biology in order to be the people that we want to be in the world. Our compulsions are always based on instinct. And like I said, our instincts are outdated. So it's fine that we have these compulsions and that we have these instincts. They were there for a reason, and we should respect those reasons, but we have to counterbalance it. Empathy is killing good people. Slowly, by installments, death by 1,000 cuts. Your unregulated empathy could be doing serious damage to you. So when I say satisfy the beast, what I mean is remember that you are a human animal designed by someone long, long, long ago who had your best interests at heart and had no idea what you were going to be dealing with. We deal with, I honestly think, more stress constantly than we ever have as a species because of the nature of technology and the world today. But that stress is different. Your empathy is being leveraged in the same way that anger is, in the same way that you can go on Facebook or any social media and people are just furious because sensationalism sells. The more sensational something is, the more dramatic it is, the more likely a human being is going to click on it. And that means the more money for the advertisers. So your empathy is being manipulated to sell news in the same way that your anger is manipulated to sell news. We have to keep an eye on this stuff. We need to remember that we are human animals, that we are this incredible beast in this incredible machine, and that we are the only ones that have insight into this incredible machine. You know, yes, our instincts are a bit outdated and they can cause problems. But if you take a moment to listen to your actual body, it can inform you of a lot of wonderful things. It can inform you whether or not you're in threat in this moment, or whether or not that threat is just mental. You can take some time to look at your body and be like, okay, what's happening in my body? Okay, I've got this tension. I've got this fear. I'm a little bit warm. My hands are a little clenched. My abdomen is a little bit tight. And then look around your environment and go, what am I responding to in my environment? There's something here that's causing me to do this, because we don't do anything for no reason at all. There's always a reason, and there's something in the environment that is the reason. And if you look around and you don't see anything threatening in your environment, check your mind. What's your mind thinking about? Because that's going to be what is upsetting you. If you look inside your body and you remember to think about the beast in that way, that you are a user of this incredible machine and you have been rented this human animal, you'll remember to take care of it the same way that you take care of your dog. There are basic maintenance tasks that must be accomplished in order for the human beast to run well. You need to walk. You need to walk your dog. You need to walk yourself. Except you are bigger than your dog, so you should probably walk yourself longer than you would walk your dog. You need to drink water. You need to eat good food. You need to sleep and get good rest. And yeah, you even need to socialize. You're going to have to socialize the same way you take your dog to the park. If you're not good at socializing, you're going to have to put yourself out there to do the same thing. It's more important for humans than it even is for dogs, I genuinely believe. And even if you're good at socializing, the reality is most of us aren't very good at it anymore, thanks to COVID and all of these restrictions. So we could all use a little practice in that. But if you remember these simple tasks, the same stuff that you got to do for your dog, then you'll do much better for yourself. You watch the news so you could stay informed and you could see what's happening around the world. When you feel stressed, that's fine. If you remember to satisfy the beast, you can go, oh yeah, I'm stressed because I just saw these people that are suffering and I don't want them to suffer. And that the only real difference between them and me right now is they have a natural progression of events that's going to lead them to their baseline again. But I don't. So remember to satisfy the beast in that moment. You can take your beast for a walk then. Lots of really cool things happen when you go for a walk. Like really cool things that happen. Remember how I was talking about how the human beast, this human animal, is incredibly efficiently designed? So one of the ways it's incredibly and efficiently designed is the same body parts that we use for locomotion and the processes that all happen, the physical motions that happen during walking, do a lot more than just move your physical body from point A to point B in space. Every single little micro movement that's happening, every pinch and every stretch, every movement is helping to facilitate other processes in the body. With each step, you are increasing your water metabolism and you are increasing your lymph movement. All of the toxins and waste from metabolism that exists in your body just from being alive and eating and cells dividing, all of that stuff gets dumped into the lymph, and then you have to move it out. And the only way to do that is mechanically. Yeah, I do mean mechanically, like mechanical squeezing. You have to squeeze it out. I'm not saying you need to grab your lymph nodes and try to wring them out like a rag. The walking does that for you. That's one of the beautiful ways that you were designed. All you got to do is walk, and a bunch of your natural processes that are necessary for maintenance of the human animal are taken care of. I think that's pretty awesome. That's another example of how to satisfy the beast. Like I said, this is a really wide, broad topic to discuss. And as I'm moving through this, I'm recognizing that I'm probably going to have to turn this into a two-parter, because the empathy is only half. The empathy is half the story. That's just one scenario in which we can remember to satisfy the beast and it be greatly beneficial. There are so many other ways that we can satisfy the beast, but for now, we'll leave it with empathy. We've all got to regulate the amount and kinds of input that we receive. We've got to remember that we are animals with species expected stimuli, aka grandma expected you to have to deal with certain stuff. And if we don't provide that stimuli for the animal that we live inside, that animal's not going to be happy. We are an observer. We are a user. I am a conscious agent that exists in a physical body that has thoughts and has feelings. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. Thoughts are not facts. We get to use these things. And if we're not standing on top of our instincts, especially those outdated ones, if we don't stand on top of them, recognizing that they're a little bit outdated and that they may not be useful for every moment in our lives, then we will compulsively throw ourselves into situations that are not beneficial, that are not helpful, and that cause us harm. The compulsions that we have in our animal are meant to keep us alive, but they were meant to keep us alive in a world that no longer exists. So it's up to us to limit the types of input and the amount of input that we have, especially the stressful kind, if we're ever going to push ourselves to our potentials. The next time that you're upset and stressed, especially if it has anything to do with your good-hearted nature and your empathy, remember to satisfy the beast. Stay blessed, y'all.